Picture this. It's the last day of 1944. High over enemy territory, two American B-17 bombers collide in midair. Now, normally that's the end of the story, but not this time. Instead of just falling out of the sky, they lock together, creating this bizarre 8-engine monster. And the craziest part? It kept flying. All right, let's get into one of the most unbelievable survival stories you will ever hear.
Can you even imagine? That's what co-pilot William Leek said to his pilot, Glenn Rojohn, just moments after the impact. Mating dragonflies? It's such a strange, almost poetic way to describe the absolute nightmare they were in. They weren't just in trouble, you see. They were in a situation that had, quite literally, never happened before in the history of flight.
So yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How on earth is this even possible? This isn't just some freak accident. This is a story about physics being pushed to its absolute limit, about unbelievable skill behind the controls, and about the kind of raw human courage that turns a guaranteed catastrophe into a story of impossible choices.
Okay, so to really get how this happened, we've got to rewind a bit. Let's set the scene. It's December 31st, 1944. The mission: hit the oil refineries in Hamburg, Germany. And let me tell you, the skies over Hamburg were about as unfriendly as it gets. The moment they got near the target, all hell broke loose. Flak from the ground was just tearing through the formation. I mean, crews were watching other B-17s literally get sliced in half. Then, after they dropped their bombs, they were jumped by German fighters. We're talking the new, terrifyingly fast Me-262 jets and swarms of Bf-109s. And in the middle of all this chaos, a Bf-109 zeroes in on the lead plane in their group, a bomber named 9 Lives, and just riddles the cockpit with machine gun fire.
The pilots of 9 Lives were killed instantly. So now you've got this ghost ship, right? Its engines are still roaring, but no one's flying it. With its controls locked in a slight climb, it just drifts up, silently, and directly into the path of 2nd Lieutenant Rojohn's plane, the Little Skipper. The impact was this tremendous shudder that threw the pilots around in their seats. For a second, they had no idea what had just happened.
And right here, this is where the real crisis begins. Because Rojohn and Leek weren't flying a B-17 anymore. Nope. They were now at the controls of something entirely new, a kind of 8-engine freak of nature that basically spat in the face of aerodynamics.
I mean, just look at these numbers. They really tell the story. You've got two heavy bombers, weighing over 65,000 pounds combined, stuck together at 20,000 feet. But the most important number on this whole slide? It's that 0. There was no precedent for this. No training manual, no emergency procedure, nothing. They were completely, utterly on their own.
So here's the thing you have to understand. This monstrosity, it shouldn't have been able to fly at all. A normal bomber is engineered for stability, but this thing, its center of gravity was a complete disaster. The two planes were actively fighting each other. You had the top plane's propellers giving thrust, while the bottom plane's wings were trying to provide lift. Every little move they made with the controls could have sent them into a deadly, unrecoverable spin.
Just trying to keep the wings level was a monumental struggle. I want you to picture this. Both pilots had to literally jam their feet against the instrument panel just to get enough leverage to haul back on the control column with all their combined might. Rojohn tried everything he could think of, gunning some engines, easing off others, trying to rock the two planes apart, but it was no use. They were fused together.
But, you know, as the pilots up front are fighting this insane physical battle, a much more personal and much more heartbreaking tragedy was unfolding just a few feet below them.
When the 9 Lives hit them, it completely crushed the ball turret on the belly of the Little Skipper. And inside that turret was the gunner, Corporal Joe Russo. He was trapped, pinned inside a cage of mangled metal with the weight of another B-17 on top of him. There was no escape, absolutely none.
And in the middle of all that noise and chaos, the crew of the Little Skipper could hear Corporal Russo over the plane's intercom. They couldn't get to him, they couldn't even see him, but they could hear his voice, calmly reciting his final prayers as this whole tangled wreck fell through the sky. Can you imagine the feeling of helplessness? Co-pilot Leek's words here are just gut-wrenching. He said he felt like he was invading his right to be alone. He was so moved by Russo's quiet dignity that he actually took his own helmet off just to give his crewmates some sense of privacy. He later said that listening to that was the hardest part of the entire ordeal.
So, with the planes barely under control, Rojohn is faced with an impossible choice. If they go down in the freezing North Sea, everyone dies, no question. Their only shot, their one and only hope, was to somehow wrestle this thing back towards land.
And what Rojohn and Leek did next? Well, it's a perfect example of what pilots call airmanship. This wasn't just about strength. This was about thinking clearly under unimaginable pressure. By fighting the planes into a slow, terrifying turn back toward the German coast, they were giving the rest of the crew the one thing that mattered, a chance to bail out over solid ground. That one decision saved lives, even as it sealed the fate of Corporal Russo.
And that turn, it was a flight through hell itself. An engine on the other plane caught fire, and soon their whole wing was covered in flames. The heat got so intense they could feel it right through the skin of the plane. And then, the 50 cal ammunition stored in the wings started cooking off, exploding like popcorn and sending bullets flying everywhere. The only way for the crew to bail out was to literally jump through a wall of fire. So as they get closer to the German coast, with enemy soldiers on the ground staring up in total disbelief, this already insane story reaches its climax. Rojohn gives the order, everybody out. That includes his co-pilot. He knows there's no way he can land this thing alone. But Leek, in this incredible moment of loyalty, he just refuses. He looks over at his pilot and says, "I'm staying, Glenn." He wasn't about to leave his friend to face the end alone. So together, the two of them fought that wreck all the way down. The 9 lives pretty much disintegrated on impact, while the little skipper slammed into a field and broke in 2. Now get this, of the 20 men on both planes that day, 10 survived. 10! That's 10 guys who should have died over the sea who lived because those 2 pilots just refused to quit. And incredibly, both of those pilots walked away from the crash. And Rojohn, he was humble about it forever after. He always said, "My co-pilot, he's the reason I'm alive." It was that shared bond, that decision by Leek not to leave, that got them through. You can just imagine the German soldiers who captured them just standing there, jaws on the floor, staring at this impossible 8-engined wreckage. So, the story of the piggyback bombers, it's more than just a wild aviation tale. It really makes you think about the choices people make when everything is on the line. Turning back to land was a calculated risk, and it saved most of the crew. But it came at a terrible cost. So it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? In a moment like that, where do you draw the line between a smart risk and a heroic sacrifice?